What's up, MetaNerdz? This video is all about the missile spamming monster that is the IG-227 Hailfire-class droid tank. Like the OG-9 homing spider droid, the Hailfire was used to collect debts years before the Clone Wars broke out. Many financial commentators have pointed out that there are some startling similarities between the Hutt cartels and the intergalactic banking clan. While some lenders might go through the planetary or republic court systems, the Hutts and the Muns are willing to make much riskier loans. Added risk comes along with higher rates, but desperate criminals and spacers are willing to take these loans, knowing the exceptionally high returns on piracy and spice running could more than make up for it. The only problem is these people aren't exactly going to dress up for a day in court. Their dressing up will be in body armor and bandoliers, shooting at any debt collectors that come by. Hutts would resort to bounty hunters and assassins, but the Muns use loopholes to legally deploy these hoop-drive tanks, as the IBC sent droids with rockets to collect from delinquent borrowers. Because the bank would often loan to prospecting settlers of remote worlds, there were times when Hailfires were used to repossess entire planets. Whether outright destroying a city, or just scaring off the borrowers and acting as a sentry, the IG-227 had a great rate of return. Millions of credits and loans could be retrieved with a small 60,000 credit investment, the same price as a TIE fighter, and less than the OG-9. But unlike the Spider duo that were made by Bactoid, the Hailfire was produced by the techno-religious Zychar bugs of Howard Engineering. They were able to keep the cost down by using a simple but effective mag pulse system on each of the hoops. Called a hoop drive, it would alternate between positive and negative charge differentials in the mag pulse unit, causing the wheel to spin towards the rear or forward so that it could accelerate or reverse. This gave it near instant acceleration, and the treads on these things allowed it to overcome almost any terrain. Much like the OG-9, it did not have a complicated AI. It isn't like the HMP that can just be told to hunt and eliminate an enemy. Behind this red photoreceptor eye, there are an array of sensors that receive direct input from the commander. You tell it where to go, then its processors are able to avoid obstacles and engage previously identified enemies. Sometimes this created a flaw where it wouldn't prioritize targets, opening up on troops before vehicles. But if this ever happened, the commander had an easy way to override it, telling it to eliminate AT-TEs first, for example. And a single Hailfire can wreck the battlefield with its 30 missile payload, 15 in each box. It also had small twin-mounted blasters for dealing with some lightly armored troops, but this was the only thing it had to protect itself while it made its way back to the hangar or to the base in order to resupply. Later in the war, Howard developed a resupply drone that could fly out to meet the Hailfire and get it set up to roll with a fresh 30. With this supply line, they were able to make it appear like the Hailfire never ran out of ammunition. Paired up with the OG-9, the Spiders would prioritize troops, and the Hailfire would rain down rockets on vehicles. By firing a cluster of 3 or 4 rockets at a time, they were able to pick LA-ATs out of the sky, though of course these gunships were the bane of its existence. Other things like the height were deliberately chosen so that they could fire over CIS assets, just like the homing spider. Other cool features are that you could use these wheels to run over ranks of clone troopers, and that these weapon attachments were modular, meaning that it could be swapped out for heavy artillery, ion cannons, and anti-personnel stun weapons. I assumed that they would use these stun weapons when they weren't that angry with debtors, and later when they didn't want terrible PR when taking over worlds for the CIS. It would also work great as a clone catcher. During its debut in the Battle of Geonosis, 4,100 of these Hailfires were present. In this first battle, they proved to be such a powerful enemy that the Grand Army of the Republic developed Bantha Squad as an anti-Hailfire special forces unit. The Hailfire could be seen in conflicts all across the galaxy, and even fighting against the Republic's first generation of AT-AT. Many had a similar fate to the AT-TE. Even after the droid decommission at the end of the Clone Wars, some were out there still slinging rockets. During the subjugation of Kashyyyk, the Wookiees used repurposed Hailfires to fight off the Empire. This must have been an insanely abrupt shift in thinking, as the droids became their only way to fight off the clone troopers, who had just been their allies a few weeks before. And this is actually one of the CIS droids that was able to be salvaged by the Alliance to restore the Republic, deploying them against the Empire on various worlds from 1 ABY on. So that's it for its history, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind the scenes stuff. The stat for the top speed is only 45 km per hour or 28 miles per hour, but that just doesn't make sense to me. That means you'd be honked at for being too slow in a residential neighborhood, and that really doesn't match what we see on screen. There were tons of visual ways that Lucas wanted to signify that the CIS were the bad guys, and even the color of smoke was used to help the viewer realize this, as the LA ATs rockets would leave these clean white smoke trails, whereas the Hailfire's rockets were all erratic and raspy, leaving smoggy black trails. And this vehicle was inspired by a mix of two Russian vehicles, the big-wheeled Russian Tsar tank and the rocket packs on the Katrushka. But it also draws on things like a 16th century Korean rocket launcher system called the Hwakcha. Additional information was gained by the Canon Guide Star Wars Encyclopedia of Starships and Other Vehicles, Legends Guide, the New Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels, the New Essential Chronology, the Essential Guide to Warfare, and Ultimate Star Wars, while also appearing in the game Star Wars Commander. So that's it for the IG-227 Hailfire-class droid tank. If you want to connect with us, help support this channel, or get your own copies of the reference materials used to make this video, be sure to check out the links in the description. Special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon, but most important of all, remember, just pay your debts, and the Force will be with you, always.